This week, we're going to be looking at spelling CBMs. Now, spelling is a really important skill for writing, and evaluating that lets us have information about a student's decoding skills. The spelling CBM assesses a student's ability to generalize learned spelling rules in new tasks in addition to the number of words students can spell correctly. Just like other curriculum-based measures, the first time spelling CBM is administered, 3 equivalent spelling lists should be used, and this is whether you're going to be conducting a universal screening or an individual student's progress monitoring. So we get started with our grade level lists. We're going to go over in just a minute some administration procedures and the scoring procedures. Now when it comes to administration, what happens is for grades 1 and 2, we give a new word every 10 seconds. But when we're in grades 3 and up, we give a new word every 7 seconds. So first and second grade will have 12 words every 10 seconds, they get a word. And then third and up, every 7 seconds, they get a word, and for a total of 17 words. It's really important that we use standardized directions, that we standardize the process for conducting our CBM and for scoring them. So we start with a standardized set. You can have them printed at the top of your page. By the time you do several of these, you'll have it memorized, but you say, I'm going to read you some words. I want you to write the words on the sheet in front of you. Write the first word on the first line, the second word on the second line, and so on. I'll give you 10 seconds to spell each word. When I say the next word, write it down, even if you haven't finished the last one. Do you have any questions? You pause for the student to ask a question, and then say, if they have a question, you should answer it, but then you would say, let's begin. Now, it's important to remember that if you have homonyms or similarly sounding words, you should include a sentence. And you can prompt to make sure that the students are on the correct item. This is really helpful with younger students. So you can say, and now on number 5, before you give the next word. You can use some abbreviated directions once the students are familiar with the process, though. Let's take a quick look at an example of someone administering a spelling CBM.
We're going to take a 2-minute spelling test. I'm going to say some words that I want you to spell on the sheet of paper in front of you. Write the first word on the first line, the second word on the second line, and so on. I'll give you 7 or 10 seconds to spell each word. When I say the next word, write it down, even if you haven't finished the last one. You will receive credit for each correct letter written. Are there any questions? Nope. Okay. Ready? Yep. Dog. Cat. Bird. Mouse. Fly. All right. Right pepper.
Each time we're administering the spelling CBMs for a student, we're actually going to administer 3 sets of word lists. And then we get the median score of the 3 samples to give us the first data point on the student's graph. After that, we want to make sure that we've got 20 to 30 different but equivalent lists in our toolbox, because that's what we're going to be using to monitor student progress in spelling throughout the year. So here on this form, you can see this is a standard list that we're going to use. We're looking at for the correct letter sequence, and then that far column on the right, the cumulative correct letter sequence scores, okay? So how are we scoring these? First of all, you should know that the total possible score for each word is going to be the number of letters in the word plus 1. But let's look at these scoring steps. If the first letter is correct, we place a caret above the letter at the beginning of the word. If the last letter is correct, we place a caret above the letter at the end of the word. Then, within the word, we identify each correct sequence of 2 letters. Now that means letters that are side by side, and we do that by placing a caret above the letter sequence. For each incorrect letter sequence, we put a caret below the 2 letters. To determine the total score, we count the total number of correct letter sequences. So we start by checking to see if the spelling is correct. If it is correct, we give credit for the number of letters plus 1. If it's not, we start with the first letter, then we check the last letter, and then we check for the sequence of the letters. There are a few special rules, and you can see these on your text, pages 93 and 94, but apostrophes, abbreviation periods, and hyphens are treated as a letter. So let's look at the word don't. We get a caret before the D, between the D and the O, between the O and the N, between the N and the apostrophe, between the apostrophe and the T, and then after the T. Remember that proper nouns have to include a capital letter. So if we look at this example with July, we get a caret below the line for preceding the J and between the J and the U because it's not a capital letter. And finally, double letters, we only count the first letter. So when we see cool, spelled as C-O-L, we get a caret before the C, between the C and the O, and then we don't count that second one and the L and following. And for instance, tapping, spelled taping, you can see where the carets are. We've got that caret below the line after the first P. Okay, let's take a minute to do some practice. Pause the video, go to the pilot shell for this week, and you will see two files called Spelling Probes Practice, and you need to look at the spelling word, look at how the student spelled it, and then score it. Okay, so this is the word list, and let's start at the top where it says said. We've got a caret there at the S, prior to the S. We don't have correct spelling or the word sequence because we have S-I-A-D. So we only get carets before the S and after the D because those were the only correct letters placed. So the LS here is 2 out of 5. Let's look at word. Now we can see the student spelled it correctly, W-O-R-D. So we've got a caret before the W, after the W, after the O, after the R, after the D. So make sure that yours matches mine, and your total CLS score for this probe is 63. And let's try one final one. What's the CLS or the correct letter score for the below spelling of the word Mickey? So we're going to start here. We put a caret before the M. We put a caret between the M and the I. We put a caret between the I and the C. These are all above the line. We don't have that K, so we're going to have a caret below the line, between where the C and K would be, and below the line between the K and the E. And then we get a caret above the line between the E and the Y, and a caret above the line from the Y after. So what kind of scores are we looking for? When we look at norms, you can see them here, 1st through 6th grade. We want to score LS of 60 for 1st grade, 79 for 2nd, 80 for 3rd and 4th, and 85 for 5th and 6th. We can also look at these scores across a single classroom or across a school or across a district to set more individualized norms. So what kind of information are we looking for? First, we want to be able to analyze student spelling to detect error patterns or areas that we need to instruct students. So we start with looking for simple consonants and vowels. Does the student consistently identify consonants at the beginnings and ends of words? Does the student consistently recognize and write short vowel sounds? Does the student write vowels that are followed by the letter R, for example, like farm rather than FRM, and her rather than HR? Next, we look for pairs of consonants. Does the student recognize and write both of the sounded consonants in a word like fast and hold? Do they correctly spell words with blends, such as great and black? Does the student recognize and write consonant digraphs in words such as teach and show? And does the student correctly write double letters in 2-syllable words with short vowels, such as rabbit and happy? Next, we look at silent letters and long vowels. With silent letters, we look to find out, does the student write silent letters correctly in words like know and climb? And what about long vowels? Can your student correctly write long vowel sounds in a variety of ways? For instance, words with a final E like late, or with vowel teams like read and main, or with IGHILOL like night, wild, and cold, or even with a Y such as party. And finally, we're looking at multisyllabic words, including words with suffixes, and we want to find patterns like, does the student include a vowel in each syllable of multisyllabic words? Or does the student follow rules for adding suffixes to root words? For example, beautiful with a Y rather than beautiful with an I. Okay, that's what we've got this week. Spelling CBM. Make sure you read the text, read the extra articles that I've posted for you, practice scoring those spelling CBMs. Have a great week.